Hey there guys, welcome back to my tutorials, and today I'm going to cover the aggregate function. So what the aggregate function does is it basically, well, aggregate in general for data sets is where you group data in a certain way. So you can get the sum of the data, you can get the count of the data, you can do a large of the data which returns the largest values, for example. You can even specify which largest value you'd like the second largest or the fourth largest, etc. So I'm going to use it in a way to sum these price cells. As you can see, I've got a couple of errors here, so I've just input what I know would give me back an error. So if I actually try and sum them, so I'll just do that here. If I try and sum this B column, you see I get divided by 0. So I hover over. So yeah, I can't sum when there's errors. So how can I get around this? I know you can do, well, if you're interested, you can use a SUMIF with, I think you can do it with an array formula to do it, but I just want a normal formula, no arrays. How can we get around this without summing it manually? If I sum it manually, so I can just check later that I've got it the correct answer. So it should be 6554. So I've literally just took two sums and ignored the divided by 0. This is fine to do manually when the data set's this small sample, but say if you have a very large data set and you've got errors hidden everywhere, you've got hidden rows and whatnot, it's going to be a pain to do it, right? So this is where aggregate comes in handy. So our aggregate is going to be a sum. Now if you look down all the different function numbers, you get to 9, and that is a sum. So we want type 9 because that's sums. Now our options, we've got 8 options, so including 0 obviously. Ignore error values. Number 6 is a pretty good one. Number 3 is also pretty good because that ignores hidden rows and errors, and then nested subtotals and aggregates, but I'm going to stick with 6 for now. And then our array is what we want to sum. So we just want to sum the price, right? And k, as I said before, is usually used with large and small to determine the kth smallest or largest. So if I do this, you see we get 6554. So it's took this price column, it's summed it where they're not errors, basically. It's been told to ignore any errors. So that is aggregate in a nutshell. It's a very powerful function to use, especially if you can figure out all sorts to do with it. So I'm going to actually do one big example with it. So if I come up here, I'm going to put item and price. So basically, I'm going to rewrite the item and price without the errors. So I'm going to get these 4 items and these 3 items. So essentially, I'll get that. And same with the price, I'm going to get that. So I'm going to ignore the errors down here. I'm going to shove them to the end and ignore them, so we're not going to get gloves or a t-shirt. But I'm going to do this with a formula, so if I have a very large data set that goes all the way down, you know, hundreds of rows, you're not going to do it manually because you've got the formula there ready to go. And you can change the range of the formula if you need to. It's a lot easier than, you know, copy and pasting this manually every time. So I'm going to start with the price actually. Now I'm going to put up an aggregate function to start with. The function number this time we want to use small. So basically what we're going to do is feed in an array to this small where we only put in true or false. And we're going to actually convert falses to errors by dividing the array by itself. Now when you divide an array by itself, you've got a list of true or falses. True divided by true is true, because true is also 1, so 1 divided by 1 is 1. Whereas false is 0, so if you do 0 divided by 0, that's going to throw an error. Now because aggregate has this options inbuilt parameter, we can actually just ignore the error values, which we're going to do. So we're going to give it type 6. So now, as for the array, I'm going to open up a bracket to initialize the array. Now array is going to be the price column. So we're going to pick up the price, we're going to fixate it, and then we basically, because they're all numbers in this example, I'm going to actually use isNumber. So I'm going to nest an isNumber into this column. And then if I shut that, close that, and then give that just k1 for now, just for illustration, you'll see we get an error to start with. That's not a problem. So if I hover into isNumber, now apologies, I always get this wrong, but if you highlight the formula and press F9, it will return the array of values. So you see we've got trues and falses. So we've got all trues and then two falses in the middle. Those falses are where we got errors because they're not numbers, right? So if I just press escape, I go back. Now what I'm going to do is come here in the formula after you've closed the brackets. So after these red brackets in my example, I'm going to divide and then open up the brackets again and write exactly the same. So I'm just copying what I've done. So I'm doing the same array divided by the same array. So as I said, you've got those trues and falses divided by the trues and falses, which give you either true, which is 1, or an error. And because aggregate is told to ignore errors, that's not a problem. So I think it's one more bracket, and I'm just going to try that. So that gives us £1. That's fine. It's just because it's formatted as a currency. I'm going to format this whole thing as general, so that's good. Now what we've got here, so if I highlight again, if I click in, I can't even see my mouse, and then if I highlight all of this and press F9, you see we've got ones and then these divided by 0 errors. So that is what I wanted, so either true or error basically. So now what I can do is I don't just want 1, I want to times it by the row of where it's in. So I'm going to pick up this row as the array. I'm going to close that, and then because we started in row 2, I want the first number to be 1, right? So I'm going to actually minus the row of the header row. And I'm going to fix that in. And then if I lock that in, that gives us the index of the first valid item in the price. That gives us the row number using this. So the first valid row number in this array here is 1. Now if I change this so it's dynamic as I drag it down, you'll see, so because I'm in row 2, I'm going to do the row minus 1. So if I drag it down, that will increment with the row. So now if I drag it down to the bottom, you see we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9. So it's missed 5 and 6. Well, if we highlight this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is an error, 6 is an error, and we've skipped those. So it's actually, these numbers here are just the row numbers in this array. So where can we use this? Well, we can just put an index function in, and our array is going to be the price array. I'm going to fix that. Actually, I'm going to fix just the rows. I want the columns to be flexible because I can actually drag this across to item, which I'll do in a minute. And then our row number is given by this aggregate function, which we just worked out. So now we can just close it. We don't have to worry about columns because it's a single column array. So if I close that, we actually get the first price item. Now if I drag this all the way down, you see that we've got the price items all listed. So, and when we get to the first error, it doesn't return it, obviously, because it doesn't. Because it's an error, it has nothing to return. But then this value here is 1595, which is this. So this has worked perfectly. We've shoved basically all the errors right to the bottom. So that's ideal. And now to get rid of that, we can nest an if error. So this basically takes a value, otherwise if it's an error, it takes whatever you specify. So if I just do two double quotes for blank space, drag this down, it's going to take those errors and just convert them to nothing, or blank even. So now if I copy this across, I'm hoping that it just works straight off the bat. Yeah. So if I copy this all the way down, you see we've got the items listed. Just for clarity, yep. You can see that they are exactly the same, and when we get to these two errors, they're not included, because you can't include the item if the price is an error, because we don't know how much it costs, we want to know. And jumper, so yeah, we get everything as you'd expect. So that's perfect. We've made this list without any errors in it. We've shoved all the errors to the bottom. They're basically here, but they're hidden by this formula because we've done an if error nest. So that is aggregate, and there's lots you can do with it. You could take a specific item. So I could change, instead of using isNumber to pick up just the numbers, so basically avoid the errors. I mean, if I had text, it wouldn't it wouldn't like it. It wouldn't like socks because it's text. If I had, you know, an error or text, it's not going to pick it up. So got to be a bit careful with it. But if it had 0.15, you know, as soon as the price comes in. If you wanted to include text and numbers, so you basically wanted to get rid. So if I had hello here, and you still wanted to pick that up for whatever reason, you just wanted to get rid of the errors. Well, you can actually come to the formula, and instead of having is number, I'm going to have to rejiggle this a little bit. But that should be okay. So there, I'm going to have is error instead of is number. But because I don't want errors, I'm just going to put a not before that. So if I put equals now, this is going to scuff it. So if I go equals all the way down, you see it's scuffed it up. But if I nest a not in there, it should hopefully work. So I just got to get the parameters right, which can be a little bit scary when it's like this. I like doing it beforehand, but yeah. So if I drag this down now, you see it's picked up hello. And now we can just copy this across. And there you go, you got the socks in there with the text. So now we've told it specifically just to ignore the errors, not just where it's a number, you pick it up. So initially I used numbers just because it's a price column, it's going to be a number or an error. But now I've got this text here. I've amended the formula to say if it's not an error, we're picking it up as true. So if it's not an error, picking up as true. When you divide the trues, they stay true. So yeah, hope that helps. Thank you guys for watching. Have a good day.